Hey guys, Jesse Laval, welcome back to my channel. I made a quick video in my garden, and I basically made a garden designed to attract pollinators in. So we've got a lot of shots of bees, butterflies, and different stuff like that. So let's go ahead and check it out, and then after we watch it, I'm going to come back and we're going to discuss some of the lenses that I used, and some of the tricks that I used to get some of my nice smooth pan shots in there. Okay guys, and I hope you liked it. So I used my Canon M50 and the EOS RP. I did a bunch of different types of shots. Some of the stuff was shot at 720p and then upscaled to 1080p. That was the stuff that I was shooting at 120 frames a second. A lot of it was shot at 1080p at 60 frames a second, and then some of it was shot at 1080p at 24 frames a second. There's also a couple of hyperlapses that are coming off my Mavic 2 Pro. Those are actually shot in 4K and then downscaled to 1080p. Everything in my video and all the videos that I ever put out are always on a 24 frames per second timeline. So you've kind of got to decide whether you want to slow down the speed of your footage to make your frame rate match, or do you want to actually just like modify the frame rate in Premiere Pro. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both of those. If you decide to just set your footage to 24 frames a second, then that's going to allow you to use warp stabilizer, which can really help a lot as far as stabilizing your footage and getting smoother footage out of some handheld stuff and taking the shakes away. On the other hand, you can also get some degradation in your image because it's going to crop a little bit. That's going to add to some of the pixelation when you crop. So you know, warp stabilizer does work pretty good, so you can usually get away with some of it and not have trouble. But then you can also get really nice slow motion if you decide that you're not going to use warp stabilizer, and instead what you'll do is keep those higher frame rates, and then you'll just choose to slow down that footage to make it match the 24 frame rate timeline that you're going to export out in. That's if you're choosing to do it the same way that I do. So I used 4 different lenses to make this video. I used the RF 35mm 1.8, I used the EF 100mm 2.8, the Tamron 100 to 400, that's 4.5 to 6.3, and then I also used the EF 24mm 2.8 that's recording me right now. Now I do like to try to get my background to really separate and get very blurry so you get that really nice bokeh. So a lot of times, even when it's really bright out, I'm using my Gobe ND filters. I get the ones that go from ND2 to ND 400, and I found those to basically be right in the scale that I need for pretty much any outdoor activity, depending, and it doesn't really matter if it's like really sunny out or it's cloudy. It allows me to shoot wide open at 2.8 and still be able to use the that I need to. So as far as like color profiles, what I've settled in on is using the neutral profile. I do have the C-Log and the CineStyle kind of log profiles that you can buy and have put into your camera, and I've just found that I don't know if I'm just not good at color grading yet, or if it's just the fact that having these 8-bit cameras, it just doesn't really make sense to use them. But I've found that I can never get the color to look as good as Canon's cameras just do when I use the neutral profile, so I don't really see the point of it. I guess if you wanted to be able to change things more, then that's nice. But I do think that it always adds more noise than is really worth. So I found that just using the neutral profile really gives me nice colors, and I am still able to kind of like lift the saturation or shadows or whatever I need to do. So it still gives me that little bit of flexibility that I want, but I've more or less given up on using the log profiles. A couple of my scenes, I think the scenes that you saw with the rabbit, were shot in log and then color graded. So those you do see some grade in. So since most of this is recording bees or butterflies that tend to move really quickly, I was shooting at higher frame rates and then either modifying it to 24 if the footage was a little shaky and I felt like I wanted to stabilize it. And if it was something that I got a nice shot and I felt that it was smooth, then I would actually just keep it at that higher frame rate. So for instance, if I'm doing a 24 frames per second timeline and I'm then shooting at 60 frames per second, what I can do is then just slow that down to 40%, make that match the 24 frames per second timeline, and everything looks nice and smooth, and I get a little bit of a slow motion footage, which is nice for the insects because the bees move so quick and the butterflies move so quick that just slowing it down that little bit really helps a lot. So the hummingbird scenes that you saw, those were the stuff that I was shooting with the M50, shooting at 720p at 120 frames a second. Unfortunately, that's the highest resolution that any of my cameras can shoot at 120 frames. So I think I'm going to try to start getting away from that and just using the 1080p 60 frames a second, because as you can see, the upscaled 720p, it's not terrible and you can get really nice sharp results. I've gotten some nice scenes out of it before, but it's just tougher. And you do see the difference from it being upscaled versus being a native 1080. So, you know, one thing that I really wish I had was 1080p at 120 frames per second. So hopefully that'll be in the next camera I get. Anyway guys, I hope that you enjoyed this little video. Just wanted to share it with you. Again, if you really like this stuff, please think about going below, subscribe, click the notification bell, and I'll see you guys on the next video.